So now formally, good morning, dear environmentalists and other CSOs, I think mainly environmentalists today. In this session, we will go in detail to the green agenda, and we will hear about the project EU for Green Recovery. And I first want to shortly present you the panel. I will do it more in depth when the persons then speak. We have here Tony Vidan from the European Environmental Bureau. We have here Nevena Smilevska from the Bankwatch and Haris Abbasbahic from the RCC. Online, we will have Jelena Miloš from DG5. And I want to pass on to her immediately because she will introduce an instrument for your online participation that we will have during this session. So please take out your mobiles and connect to the internet. For those who don't have an internet connection established yet, the code here in Alexander Palace is 87654321. So like a countdown beginning with 8. Please go online and Andrea, please connect us with Jelena.
Hello, can you hear me well?
Yes, Jelena, welcome.
Thank you. Good morning. What a strange way to join virtually. It's nice to see you all. And yes, I wanted to introduce, because this session, we'd also like to get some feedback from those attending online. So we decided to use Slido. So it's a very straightforward application. You can go online here. I'm just going to share my screen. And you see, we'll take some audience polls during the sessions. So what you could see the web page and the code that you enter. And then I think as a nice break, maybe Birgit, if you're okay, I'll launch the two first questions. So let me just. The polls are open. As an icebreaker for this session. Now, over to you, Birgit. Do you want me to continue or I'm in your hands?
All those who are already on there in the poll, please raise your hands. So only one, we have to wait a little bit, I'm afraid.
No, we just, what we'll do is we'll let this run throughout the speaker's interventions, and then we'll refer back to it. Just to see while people get get more accustomed to it and wake up after coffee and vote. So yeah, there's no rush. So you can always access this code, and I'll put a link in the chat as well, which you can get to directly. Although, yeah, this is more relevant for our online participants. So we have some 10 people voting. Thank you very much.
Okay, so it's working. And Jelena, just a few words about you, because you are here the scene setter with your introduction. You will tell us something about the Green Agenda, the Green Deal, and especially a new project which will be run by the Austrian Environmental Agency, on which behalf I'm here, the EU for Green project for green recovery. Just a few words about you, Jelena. Jelena is a policy coordinator at the DG NIR in the Direction 5 for Western Balkans regional programs and economic investment plans. She has studied chemical engineering, and she before worked as a policy officer also in the European Union for disaster risk reduction policies at the European Union. And I think what we are doing here by trying to recover nature and environment is one of the main points of disaster risk reduction. So your career follows a plan, and we are all keen to hear more about the Green Agenda and especially EU for Green project. It's your stage, Jelena. Thank you.
Thank you, Birgit, for the kind introduction. Yeah, I've been following the climate and environment policies for a while, and it's correct. I think my main focus is, of course, the climate action. So I'm happy to give a few words of introduction on the Green Deal, the Green
Jelena,
Agenda
just a
for the
minute.
Western
We have a
Balkans.
technical problem here. Just 1 minute. We will clear that.
Okay, I hope it's all okay on your end. I hope you can hear me now again. So yes, I just wanted to give a few words of introduction on the Green Deal, on the Green Agenda for the Western Balkans, which is an external kind of part of the Green Deal, and the EU for Green project. So please bear with me. And while you are listening to me, you can also answer to some of our icebreaker questions on Slido. So, just as a scene setter, and I think it was mentioned very um, frequently yesterday, we are experiencing an accelerating climate crisis, energy crisis, and of course, conflicts. The war in Ukraine and the climate change have also exacerbated food security or food insecurity worldwide. And like a participant said yesterday, everything is interconnected in regards to these crises. So just going back to climate change, just reminding you here of the science, this year's reports of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change are just yet another red flag, alarm, stark warning that we need to reduce greenhouse gas emissions quickly by decarbonizing and also adapting to the effects of climate change, which we experience now. So it's no longer a distant threat, but reality for us. So within the EU, the strategy to tackle this green transition is the EU Green Deal. It's still relevant today, as for example, it's not been left aside during the COVID-19 pandemic crisis. It's part of the recovery and resilience plans of member states on this building back better. And also the war in Ukraine, where there is now an impetus to speed up the Green Deal implementation and accelerate the clean energy transition. But that's easier said than done. So decarbonizing requires a dramatic change in the way we live, we do business, we travel, we produce, the way we manage or we manage our natural resources. So, for example, yesterday there was a vote in the EU Parliament on some parts of this Fit for 55 proposal, which aims to cut greenhouse gas emissions by 55% by 2030. So members of the parliament did not adopt positions on reform of the EU's carbon market, the introduction of a carbon border tax, and establishment of a social climate fund. But they did vote later to effectively ban the sale of new petrol and diesel cars by 2035. And what you saw, the debate was certainly heated with the backdrop of war and inflation. So how do you further add pressure on businesses and consumers? These are all difficult questions that are relevant for us all in the region as well, in the Western Balkans. Now on the green agenda for the Western Balkans, it's an adapted regional equivalent of the EU Green Deal, uh, and it is addressing these pillars of decarbonization, depollution of soil, air, and water, agri-food measures, circular economy, and biodiversity. This green agenda for the Western Balkans, I think Holger introduced it a bit yesterday. It's not a commission policy. So the leaders of the region adopted the Sofia Declaration on the Green Agenda in November 2020, which was also followed up by a more concrete action plan, both at regional and national level in Brdo in Slovenia last year. And the Regional Cooperation Council has been mandated by the Sofia Declaration to coordinate the implementation of the Green Agenda for the Western Balkans. And Haris will tell us a bit more on this part. So this action plan is detailing timeframes, also nominating regional organizations that would support the implementation of the Green Agenda at regional level. And it also foresees an NGO forum, which is a platform sort of platform to monitor the implementation and development of green agenda policies. As regards EU support, the Green Agenda is a part of the economic and investment plan for the Western Balkans. This plan, I think it was referred to yesterday, it's a very large investment package for economic recovery with priorities for green and digital transition, regional integration, and EU convergence. And the funding there is up to 9 billion euro for the period of 7 years starting from 2021. Now, there are flagship projects that are investment flagships that are defined in the plan that will support the areas related to the Green Deal, the Green Agenda, and they relate to, for example, renewable energy, renovation wave, waste and wastewater management infrastructure, and of course, transition from coal and other projects like sustainable transport connections in the region. Now, coming for this EU for Green project, it's of course not only about investments, it's about policies. So we are also supporting a substantive regional project to support the implementation of the Green Agenda. And this is done in close cooperation with relevant regional organizations, also the RCC. And in the framework of this project, the Austrian Environment Agency, which is the implementing partner for this project, will work directly with the Western Balkan administrations to translate the Green Agenda and its pillars into national frameworks, and it should involve all relevant stakeholders. So it has some main objectives. It's basically to push or support the implementation of the Green Agenda action plans, focusing on the 5 areas of implementation. It also is supposed to set or support setting up monitoring and reporting processes for the Green Agenda for the Western Balkans, so they are operational. It's also supposed to work on citizen awareness on green transition and in the beneficiary countries. And of course, there's a close link to implementation and programming under the instrument for pre-accession to link this to the relevant investments that are available in the economic and investment plan. Now, some details. The project has started in January 22, so this year. It will last until end of 2025. It's quite a substantive budget of 11 million euro. Now, the project is in its inception phase. It's mapping existing stakeholders, initiatives, programs. It's preparing a detailed work plan together with the beneficiary countries. And also establishing the project structures and project offices. So we will have project offices in Belgrade, Sarajevo, and Tirana. Now, the project will kick off next week in Montenegro with a dedicated country with dedicated country workshops following after. So the kickoff is in Montenegro for the region. And we are also involving civil society organizations in the kickoff as well. And so we are glad that there are clear comments and kind of a good position from the organizations. You might know about this statement that was signed by 40 plus CSOs in the region on the Green Agenda last week. So how will the EU for Green involve CSOs? I guess there are 2 ways that we can work with, or EU for Green can work with CSOs as a bit of giving feedback, doing the watchdog function that organizations do so well in the region. And we can also work on or the organizations can support the dialogue on the green transition and sort of push the public, because this is quite a public discussion. And I think Tony yesterday said, don't go talk to the Commission on the Green Agenda, go talk to the parliaments. So there's quite some legwork to do to convince, to lobby, and to pressure decision makers to take the Green Agenda and its transition seriously, and in a more of a longer term. So I'm just going to leave it there. I think I've spoken for too long. And I really look forward to this discussion, and hopefully we can get some more inputs While I have you here, I can also share some initial findings from our poll. So let me just go back to the.
Thank you very much, Jelena. More in detail, the first one to go more in detail because he's already experienced in implementing a Green Deal in Croatia and the EU is Tony Vidan. To explain what he did during his life would take the whole session, so I refer only to what he is doing now. He is Vice President of the European Environmental Bureau, EEB, and that's why you are here. But you have also been recently appointed by the city of Zagreb for it as on the board for the regional energy agency, Regia. You have been working on renewable energy issues since Chernobyl, you mentioned yesterday. So this must have been a really exciting thing in your life which changed your plans. And now you are here and present about the Green Deal in Croatia and EU. Please, Tony.
Thank you very much. I mean, this regional energy agency is not regional in terms of Western Balkan region, which is what we are using word regional on this conference. It's a regional for northwest Croatia, so Zagreb and few counties around it. And yes, all my life I'm a campaigner for what we like to call sustainable energy, and one can think, you know, more than 30 years of campaigning, you wouldn't be so happy what is actually achieved. But it's mixed feeling because I guess with the age, person understands that transformative changes in the societies are slow processes. And actually, it's not a small thing what happened that now we have European Union basically having official mainstream policy what environmental NGOs were asking 10, 20, 30 years ago. Of course, from the language to the implementation, there is a small gap and some smart effort needed, but official policies are driving the process. And I think now we will be surprised how this implementation process will be quicker than political win, which we needed several decades to achieve. And however, this transition seems tremendously demanding. I think we will be on the end surprised how many segments of that transition will be relatively easy in terms of technological change. So just a few sentences. I mean, Jelena gave good overview of the European official policy of the Green Deal. I think we should definitely mention one important phrase, which is Fit for 55 package. It sounds a little bit like some sort of health program for middle age, but it is actually implementation plan of Green Deal, and it's tremendously important. Also, what is important to mention is that behind these nice words and policies, for the first time, there is actually a real money. And it is a significant amount of money made available, both through the, of course, multi-annual financial framework, which is kind of normal EU financing programs, but also through the next generation EU recovery plan. I mean, this is for the first time that we have available financial resources practically on a scale which Juncker Commission dedicated to save financial sector in Europe during the financial crisis in 2008 or 9 or 10. So it is not just policy. Now we have also money on the table. Of course, and now I have another list like yesterday. And this is a list what NGOs are demanding in terms of making this Fit for 55 plan even more credible and ambitious, because let us not forget 55% reduction is still not 65% reduction of greenhouse gases. And science is telling us that Europe needs to achieve 65% greenhouse gas reductions till 2030 to be in alliance with science. So I will, of course, go through the list of EEB demands for improvement of Fit for 55 package. It is not that long list, but I think it describes well what the magnitude of change we are actually experiencing in Europe at the moment. So we are asking that climate neutrality should be achieved by 2040, not by 2050, as it is official policy at the moment. We are asking that 65% greenhouse gas reductions should be achieved by 2030, baseline 1990. We are asking at least 50% of renewables covering final demand by 2030. We are asking 45% improvement in energy efficiency by 2030. We are asking for coal phase out Europe-wide, EU-wide for 2030. Gas phase out for 35. Fossil oil products, so all kind of fuels and whatever from the fossil oil, phase out by 2040. Nuclear, most of nuclear also phase out by 2040. And last on the list, sale of cars with internal combustion engine ban by 2035. Now, those are our demands from last year as a reaction for the announced Fit for 55 package. And as we heard from Jelena, this last demand on ban of cars is already voted in a parliament. So it's not fantasy land. It's serious political process which is going on in the European Union and which is transformative. Now, I'm referring to the debate from last year, because this year, I think all debates are up in the air because we have a war in Europe. I guess it would be interesting to be able to answer, will this war speed up or slow down this transformative agenda? I dare to say nobody knows yet. We are still in, chaos. But there are serious signs that despite on the fact that on some sort of short time, tactical level, some processes are slowing down or some resources are being wasted. For example, in Croatia, Croatian government is burning this huge money for green transition, for actually subsidizing gas and fuel to keep, households and industry okay, not facing too big increase in energy prices. But most of colleagues, I believe, as competent, believe that on a strategic level, this huge disruption, this war in Europe will actually speed up a process of transition from fossil fuels to renewables. And many people make a real link between this policy transformation of European Union and this war. And I don't want to speculate how much, what is Putin thinking or what is going on, but basically this transformative debate and action which is going in European Union is happening despite Brexit. It's happening despite COVID, despite refugee crisis. So if you are leader of petrol state, which is basically earning practically all money by selling fossil fuels to Europe, what is your next move after all these efforts to disrupt this transition? Anyway, just for the end, I don't know how many seconds I have left. On Croatian example, well, what to say? Croatia has close to 30 billion euros on its disposal for green transition for a period over next less than 10 years. from European funds, mostly grants. So we have huge historic opportunity to actually, solarize Croatia and make it green as small country could green be. Unfortunately, there is a very clear signs that policy is somehow just not willing to let that money flow to the households, to the small businesses, to the individuals, to the local communities. They are trying to keep it close for their friends, for big investors. And we have really sad examples of, huge wind farms being built in Croatia. And they're built by completely strange companies for whom nobody ever heard. Those companies are not willing to pay single kuna to local community as a sort of revenue for the using local natural resource. I mean, compare that to the West European legislation where you have obligation to offer ownership of a windmark to local community, to have it involved in your project. In Croatia, we are having now case on a court that municipality where wind farm is built is suing that company because that company is not willing to pay single kuna or euro to municipality on which area wind farm exists. So it's a type of a transition which is definitely not beneficial for the sort of social development of Croatian society in a good direction. I think I really overstepped, sorry, and well, thanks.
Yeah, thank you very much, Tony, for, you earned it, for giving us hope on the one side, but also pointing on heavy mistakes on the other side. And we're now coming to the next set of Saido questions. Jelena, please.
Okay, I just wanted to see what we have so far. Here we go. So we have questions on which pillars. So there's a lot of organizations, but not too many answers working on decarbonization, depollution, you see here. And I wanted to share more results of the poll. There are a few organizations working on biodiversity. Please, these are open, so please do answer when you have time. And there is good familiarity with the green agenda for the Western Balkans, so that's good. But now I'll activate the next of the poll. So back to you, Birgit, to the next set of speakers.
Thank you very much. We will come back to that. And now I want to introduce to you Dragana Miliusinic. I'm afraid I did not very well pronounce your second name. Dragana is director of the Southeast Europe program of the Nature Conservancy. The Nature Conservancy is one of the largest conservation organizations worldwide and active in the Western Balkans. Dragana is working more than 10 years on renewable energy issues, regionally here and in Serbia and Montenegro. The past 5 years, she was focusing on advancing nature-friendly renewables. Dragana, I would like to ask you about your experience so far with the Green Agenda and especially the regional NGO dialogue and your proposals on how to operationalize the Green Agenda on the regional level in terms of the decarbonization and biodiversity protection. Welcome, Dragana.
Thanks a lot. I hope you can hear me well over there. Yes, seems so. Great. Thanks everyone for inviting me to be part of this panel. I'm calling in from Brussels. This has been my home for the past eight and more years, and hopefully there are many people in that room who have already collaborated with me either in while I was at Climate Action Network Europe or in the Nature Conservancy. I will reflect a bit on my experience with the Green Agenda so far as I've been observing it, I would say, from Brussels. So I've been hearing about the Green Agenda for, I feel, almost an eternity. It's been at least 3-4 years that I've actually heard colleagues back in DG Environment that they were thinking of creating the Green Agenda. And I have to say, at the very early days, it sounded as a really bold vision and as something that will really bring a huge change to the region after all the years and the decades that actually Tony and his colleagues were there and kind of really fighting for the change of the approach of European Commission, but also governments to green issues in this region. So I would say we started very hopeful for the past few years, expecting that the Commission will really now set and drive the Green Agenda in the region. And then we've seen also, as this agenda was moving along in the EU, we've seen how it started shaping up in the region. So in the past 2 years, we've seen then the declaration, as Jelena was already talking about, on the Green Agenda, that set sort of a vision, and I would say it did bring at the early days a breath of optimism that the governments themselves are already also committing to tackle the issues that were mentioned today. But then we also got into the action plan, and I think this is where also, as the NGO sector, we got a bit to a moment. Okay, is this real? Is this ambitious enough? How is now this going to be translated into concrete action in the region? So I myself am focusing, as you, Birgit, mentioned, on decarbonization to some extent, and also on biodiversity. So in these areas, we do believe that there is a lot of potential for regional action, and this is something that we now hope to see through the implementation of the Green Agenda Action Plan. And in that regards, I have to underline on the more content side that I have the impression that we have actually already lost quite a bit of time between defining and adopting the action plan and the implementation. So I'm really happy that we're actually here today and that there are now clear processes that will enable that implementation. This year is the year of the COP on conventional biological diversity, when we actually expect to see the new post-2020 biodiversity framework. So from kind of that point of view and those pillars of the Green Agenda, we really expect to see acceleration of implementation of these processes in the region as well. Now, to come to the more interesting topic, which is the NGO involvement in the Green Agenda. So about a year ago, the RCC and colleagues are here today, so we'll hear from them on the next steps shortly. But the RCC was the one who actually initiated a formation of a regional NGO forum. And I was asked to take chairmanship, temporary chairmanship, for about 6 months in that forum. So I'm here to kind of share my experience, maybe some of the lessons learned, and offer some points for discussion for the way going forward. I want to underline few things in this. I think the idea itself of creating a regional forum was a very good one, and I think it was in general quite embraced by the NGOs, who felt that there was some sort of a gap in terms of regional coordination and direct communication between the European Commission, regional institutions, and the NGOs. So I think while the process itself was a bit, I would say, clumsy, to call it that way at the very early days as we were trying to figure it out, I think the idea and the need was clearly there. And also in the recent meetings at the regional level as well, all the feedback that I hear is that people are still very much interested in that and see the need for the regional coordination. I think there were two main challenges that we experienced as NGO sector, but also I can speak on my personal behalf. One of them were the deadlines. So I think what happened also in these early days is that even though we were kind of convened together and offered an opportunity to really participate in the process and join working group meetings, the ministerials, and so on, we were always given a very short time to coordinate and to come up with our joint positions. So I think this was one of the biggest hurdle, especially at this beginning, because the reason why I got actually into this into this role was to actually help speed up and set up these initial processes. But then, as mentioned, then we had like one week deadline to comment on a Green Agenda Action Plan when we were, I believe, around 100 civil society organizations. So this makes for anyone, I would say, a coordination of NGOs impossible. And this is also the reason why gradually we've also got, I would say, well, disengaged to some extent, because it was really difficult to kind of coordinate and provide meaningful input. The other issue, I would say, are capacities in general. So the reason why I personally accepted to this role, even for the short term, because I felt at that point that I can actually commit practically voluntary time to help do this and set up and give over to colleagues, ideally from the region. But as the agenda, I would say, my personal agenda and work grew, it became pretty much impossible. I'm mentioning that because I think that's no different for almost anyone from the colleagues in our region. So what we managed to do at the early days of this forum are two main things. So one of them was to actually run a sort of application process or expression of interest process, where we circulated the invitation for the NGO forum across the region for the organizations to actually express interest to participate. But we also ran a survey asking the NGOs to also express the interest on the topics they work on, as well as whether they are able to become thematic leaders or even chairs of such a forum. And I'm happy to also share those results with colleagues in RCC and others who will further this work going forward. But the results of those surveys show that there is very limited capacity of colleagues to actually take on more prominent roles. So that's something to underline also for the implementation of the EU for Green project, I think, is how do we actually equip people to be able to take participation in this process in a really meaningful way, and also to ensure that coordination kind of doesn't crack up, I think, depending on one person or so. And then finally, I think my biggest my biggest plea for next planning period, as now there will hopefully be more clarity also with the EU for Green project, is really timely communication and deadlines. As I mentioned, if we constantly have short deadlines and 1 week commenting periods, I don't think the cooperation is going to function. So one of the concrete proposals would be to maybe have a yearly work plans that will hopefully happen anyway, and for those to be communicated to the NGOs in ahead of time, so we can also then adapt ourselves and plan and be ready basically to react or to be part of events as they are coming. So those are just some of my first honest observations. I'm also here for questions and discussions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dragana. Now I want to introduce Nevena Smilevska more in detail. She's working more than 11 years on decarbonization, just transition, and at the Climate Center for Environmental Research and Information, the ECOSWEST in Macedonia. She's now working, there are many people who are just recently in their jobs, actually, on a very, very interesting issue. She's in the CEE Bank Watch network, which doesn't only watch banks, but also European money flows, and her responsibility is the just transition coordination for Western Balkans, focusing on green agenda, decarbonization, depollution, and biodiversity. Nevena, what would your feedback be on the implementation of the green agenda so far? And do you think that CSO participation is a priority, or just normal, or just set aside? Please give us an overview. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Birgit. As Birgit introduced me, I'm Nevena Smilevska. I come here as part of the CEE Bank Watch network, where, as announced, I work as the Just Transition Coordinator for the Western Balkans as of recently, but until a couple of months, I worked only for ECOSWEST, which is a national level organization working on many issues, including decarbonization, just transition, Actually, that was the program that I was heading, but we work on many more issues. And as part of this program that I was heading, the Green Agenda for Western Balkans was one of my priorities. So I was following the implementation, and I still am. During the period where the Green Agenda was more or less announced and before the Sofia Declaration, I did a series of CSO workshops for priorities regarding the Green Agenda. And I would say that I will not go into details on the Green Agenda because this is a wonderful document that will change the economy and society overall if implemented. But the keywords here are if implemented. So the short answer about the implementation is that implementation is lagging behind quite a lot as documents are being drafted and adopted. But the Green Agenda is either mentioned declaratively or not mentioned at all in these documents. There may be scattered actions that can be presented as related to the Green Agenda, of course. But unfortunately, this is not Green Agenda driven, actually. One example is the recently adopted NECP in North Macedonia. This document was drafted before the Green Agenda for Western Balkans, but it was not amended to mainstream the Green Agenda, actually, even though it was adopted only about a week ago. So while its goals do feed into the Green Agenda for Western Balkans without question, no specific measures in it are directed to the pillars other than decarbonization. And even the decarbonization there is not really related to the Green Agenda for the Western Balkans and the requirements of it. They are more related to previous requirements that the country had in relation to the Energy Community Treaty. So that was the short answer. The long answer would be to ask a question back to some of the panelists maybe, or to the audience if someone has an answer. While we do have a regional implementation plan, when will we have national level implementation plans? When will we have annual work plans that would break up the activities or actions in the regional action plan, which are really, really vast, into manageable pieces? And more importantly for us as CSOs, how will we include CSOs in this process? And how will we ensure ownership? I mean, the CSO panel is more than welcome, but a recent survey by the WWF Adria has shown that the ownership of the processes related to the Green Agenda is really low. And moreover, the knowledge about the Green Agenda for the Western Balkans, even among CSOs who work in the environmental sector, unfortunately, is not at the level that it should be if we want to have anything implemented until 2030. So to answer the second question, there is much room for improving the inclusion of CSOs in all related processes, and to improve the transparency of spending the famous 9 billion euro. And there is a question here about, will these funds only be spent for flagship projects from the economic and investment plan, or will it be for other things too? And the fact is that we have less than 8 years until 2030, which is the end year of the action plan. And in these less than 8 years, we need to achieve a massive change in economy. And not only in economy, in society overall. And we still have seen very little practical movement on the ground. So another very sore spot for the CSOs on the regional level is the national single project pipeline system for choosing the projects for the WBIF, and its non-transparency. Furthermore, this pipeline system encourages wish list planning instead of encouraging the strategic planning, that it was designed for. So we could only see the projects in these lists after they were approved in some countries, and in others, the transparency was even less than that. So we had to request from the Commission actually the list to know what was on the lists in our countries. On another note, the decarbonization pillar of the Green Agenda for Western Balkans is a mixture of adopting new legislation and undertaking additional action. But under the biodiversity pillar and the depollution pillar, the adoption of the and not only adoption, but also the implementation, very importantly, of the Habitats and Birds Directive and the Water Framework Directive, respectively, is not actually mentioned in the document, although adopting and implementing these directives is even more important than coming up with new strategies, such as the biodiversity strategy, which is mentioned. So the question here is, how is the Commission going to ensure that the Green Agenda and the need for even more strategic or planning documents related to it will not divert attention from the day-to-day legal implementation, which is so very much needed? And how much time do I have left?
You have 2 more minutes.
Lovely, thank you. So in relation to biodiversity, only last week, a large group of CSOs working mostly on biodiversity issues, but also other green agenda for the Western Balkan related issues, adopted and sent to the Commission a declaration or let's say a joint CSO statement on the implementation of the green agenda for the Western Balkan in the Western Balkans. So I have it here in print, so I will read out a couple of points that those CSOs have sent to the, basically they sent the statement to all the DGs, which are relevant for this document. They note that there are some positive examples, but policy and decision making is largely done in a non-transparent way, with limited opportunities for involvement of the civil sector and independent manners. Also, they recall that the commitment by governments to the environmental agenda is mostly declarative. Due to this, basically lack of political will, the adoption of new strategies and green transition is very slow and implementation is lacking. They also note that there is lack of clarity about the process and funding around the green agenda, both on the regional and national level. And that effective engagement of CSOs is still not enabled, which relates to the lack of ownership that I mentioned before. Also, in most countries of the region, they note that there is very little information and understanding about the purpose and goal of the green agenda, and then that most of the processes led by governments in relation to this are behind closed doors. They declare that they ask the European Commission to provide guidance to the governments in the region for appropriate identification and implementation of potential green agenda projects and action plan. In this respect, a clear criteria checklist linked to the main objectives of the green agenda that would provide the necessary steps and methods for decision makers. And in relation to this, it was mentioned in discussions that there can be no funds under the economic and investment plan if the goals of the green agenda are not met. So no funds can go into coal infrastructure or anything fossil fuel related. So no gas, no coal, no road that would enable more fossil travel. And a series of other things that are not in relation to the green agenda, but were on the list of priority projects. So furthermore, they demand a wide forum that enables involvement of relevant CSOs with the consultative and monitoring roles. And timely, inclusive, and meaningful participation of CSOs that needs to be a precondition to the approval of any green agenda projects and plans proposed by national governments. So in practical terms, this would mean any project that has not undergone suitable public consultations cannot be funded with these money. So the statement that they singled out is that the undersigned CSOs demand a transparent, participatory, and meaningful process for the planning, implementation, and monitoring of the green agenda in the Western Balkan countries. It is signed by by 42 organizations, actually. So to sum up from this CSO statement, CSOs are generally not satisfied with the level of inclusion and the ownership of processes, and have asked the Commission through several DGs to provide suitable inclusion for them. Thank you very much.
I think we could talk hours only just about this statement. Unfortunately, we don't have that time. And I'm already curious what the participants here and online did on the Slido. So back to Jelena, to Brussels, please.
So let me just, thanks a lot, Birgit. Let me just share my screen. So I think there is a few answers. We're still a bit low on response rate, but it's quite clear that decarbonization and energy and mobility are the topics that NGOs are working with, the biodiversity as well, and circular economy following. And then we have this question: how would you describe the role of your organization in implementing the green agenda? Everybody's doing everything. That kind of shows the overstretched capacity of CSOs in terms of resources and tackling this huge agenda. And then here, I think some of the questions that maybe Haris will also try and tease out. So what are the obstacles and barriers to effective regional dialogue on the green agenda? And here, I think the capacities are leading in terms of top reasons, as well as time constraints, really. I think Dragana mentioned this as a bit of a problem or an issue. So back to you, Birgit. I'll open the next set of slides or polls while Haris speaks.
Thank you very much. And now we come to Mr. Haris Abaspahic. He is a senior expert on the green agenda for Western Balkans at the Regional Cooperation Council, RCC. RCC has so far facilitated green agenda and green action plan development at the regional level. Haris is also a newbie in here, and he started in April. His background is both governmental and CSO related, so hopefully you will bring us together very well. Haris, how does RCC see the process of involving the civil society at the regional dialogue level on especially green agenda implementation? Is it moving forward? Is it stucking? What's it about?
Thank you, Birgit. First of all, I'm very impressed every time when you pronounce my family name. It's a perfect pronunciation. Thank you. And I'm glad to be here today, and I'm glad that we have this discussion, and I'm glad that we have this discussion in such broad form, and it's always a pleasure to engage with a representative of civil society in the first place. And it's always hard to be last speaker when you have such a good panelist before you. So I'll try to be relatively short. To maybe I'll reflect on some things that we already heard, but then I'll try to also to ask some questions and to use this opportunity as another opportunity to collect a little bit more feedback about the processes moving forward from you as a part of the civil society. To recap, actually, several keywords that we heard so far: I think the magnitude of change envisaged within the green agenda and action plan that followed the green agenda. I think that we should be aware also of the external environment that is extremely unpredictable at this point of time, as has been during the time of the negotiation adoption of the both green agenda and action plan for Western Balkan itself. I think this bold, a very serious commitment that came in the time of big uncertainty and followed by the very ambitious action plan at the end of the day. I think those are achievements that and commitments that are very, very, very significant. We are talking about a timeline of 30, 40 years, and we have to understand, to setting right structures, right processes in place. It's, especially on the regional level, it's pretty complex exercise, as it is the involvement of the different segments of the broader regional society or constituency that deal with the green agenda itself. So RCC has a very significant role in facilitating a regional dialogue and promoting a regional cooperation between the Western Balkan and Southeast Europe, and had a really significant role in facilitating development of the both documents, and we are proud of that. We also have a very significant role in facilitating processes on the regional level together with other relevant or regional agencies or initiatives responsible for the certain pillars or elements of agenda itself. And I think that generally speaking, we are all aware that all the changes that we expect to have in place are really big and requires the government as a whole approach and the society as a whole approach. And I think that's well recognized in action plan itself. When action plan refers to inclusion of all different segments of the society that should be that are affected and that should be a part of the process, starting from the civil society, but the business community, local communities, and then we have the whole just transition exercise. And behind all those numbers that we are talking, there are people, there are families, there are lives that we should take care of and make sure that we don't have big losers from this transition as well. So I think the overall, the experience on a regional dialogue, RCC is working very closely on regional integration and supporting the countries in the region in enhancing common regional market policies, and the green agenda is very complementary agenda to this process. So I think generally speaking, dialogue on this area, it's extremely important. Raising awareness and promoting the goals, objectives, commitments, and benefits and opportunities is exercise that is really important. I think we are still missing a certain part. We would benefit from more analytical underpinning altogether from the processes, prices, effects, alternatives, and so on. Generally speaking, I think many of you mentioned the financing green agenda or financing green transition. I think that there are great efforts from the European Commission to provide additional and substantial financing to support the processes. But I think the financing green transition is much broader topic that should be discussed carefully. So there is a need for domestic resources mobilization. There is a need. We know what is in the pipeline with carbon taxes, with the implementation of emission trading systems, and so on. The private finances need to pull on as well. So and I think we are aware that the global tendencies that even the public investments, private finances are becoming more and more green in any case, so we have to think about those opportunities as well. So I think discussing the financing green transition, it's something that should have more effort in the future and should be discussed in a comprehensive way. Just recently here that only the implementation of environmental related acquis in Serbia will cost around 50 billion of euros. Just recently, 2 weeks ago, we heard that the price of green transformation in Austria is relatively equal to 4% GDP on an annual basis moving forward. So I think that the topic of financing green transition is very relevant one and should be discussed from a more comprehensive way to include all potential sources and opportunities that come with them as well. At the end of the day, I think that overall, the changing development path and the changing the investment framework and pattern are requiring times, and I think that we have to find a way how to support those processes in a way to create the ambient and atmosphere for challenging decisions altogether. So we are really happy. To use this opportunity to get more feedback from the civil society. How do you see the regional component of the dialogue on the green agenda itself? So we heard that that regional agenda is owned by the region itself, supported heavily by the European Commission, and so on. How to make effective regional dialogue? It's only one question. I think the dialogue should take place on all levels. I think the implementation and planning and implementing and monitoring and supporting and promoting activities envisaged within agenda cannot come from the government itself. If you don't have a whole society understand what's going on, support, discuss, and ready to take their part of the responsibility, that's the only way to have this process successful moving forward. So I don't think that anywhere in the world this kind of dialogue is kind of smooth, effective, and without any hiccups. So I think that the purpose of this dialogue to have a variety of the opinions, information, positions that should be taken in the count as well. So I think that talking about dialogue, I don't think that we should take in account how to synergize with the dialogues taking place on the national, subnational, and local level as well. I think that the civil society is broad very much. Green agenda topics are very comprehensive, covering many segments. So how to make this dialogue very effective? It isn't, you know, one step activity. It's a process when we are all learning, when we all developing our capacities, understanding, and I think that we have to be kind of, we don't have time to wait, but we have to be very patient at the same time as well. You know, I guess that's the main point. But we need civil society, RCC need more disengagement, governments need them, and versa. But we really have to think how to create this enabling environment on the regional level as well. So we'll build on the experiences from the previous NGO forum and start preparing for the NGO forum this year. And we would like really to use the next few months to engage as much as we can, both with the civil society and with the government, you know, to see their different views and position how to make this dialogue effective as can be. We are very often discussing a progress on the implementation of the action plan itself. I don't think that we still have some comprehensive overview of the progress across the regions, across the elements of the green agenda itself. RCC is working and preparing for a first report that is on the implementation of the green agenda that will include both qualitative and quantitative indicators, and we will need views and perspective from the civil society to reflect on those as well. We are also preparing for the next NGO forum, you know, and I just came to it 2 months ago, and I hear a lot of opinions, thoughts, positions on experiences so far. And I think they are very valuable, and should be taken in account, in designing the next forum, but not only forum, but the whole process of engaging effectively at the regional level. So I'll be really happy to hear from you today, your views and positions or thoughts on how adequately scope the dialogue at the regional level, how to ensure the proper participation on 1, 2, 3 side, and what are the other elements that should be included a part of this big event and the processes around this event to enhance the participation, this regional dialogue on implementation of the Green Agenda. I will be really happy to have those, to collect some of those inputs that could fit well with the questions that Jelena introduced, so it will be good input for moving forward and fine-tuning the concept around the NGO forum this year.
Harris, you play the ball to me because I just want to open.
Okay, I'm done. I'm done.
Thank you very much, Harris. And now is the point where I want to ask the audience, the participants here and online, for their questions, comments, or whatsoever. The first who raised his hand is Tony.
Just a question, because I'm an energy guy. I'm not, I guess, sophisticated enough to understand these social processes things. We have what? 2 years of Sofia Declaration.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that we all agree that dialogue in a region on implementation will be challenging. But where is that dialogue? I mean, where it is happening? Because, I'm a vice president of EEB, European Network. We want to contribute. We have some expertise. We can really help. We would love to be part of the dialogue and help. But we don't know that it is actually happening, or if it is happening, it's not happening in a way which is visible or understandable to us. And God forbid that actually there is still no dialogue 2 years after the document, which I really don't like to believe. So help me to understand where is that dialogue happening and how we can help.
Nevena, please.
Thank you. To your last question, I would like to reply first, Harris. The way to meaningfully engage CSOs is to use the national level networks that already exist. For example, here in Macedonia, there is at least 2 networks that I know of. It is the National Climate Coalition, and there is the Natura 2000 Coalition. Also, there are several more networks of organizations. We are also very well organized. We have a mailing list that we use for consultations. We have rules how to do this in a meaningful and inclusive way. So it is very easy. You just need to spread the word very broadly, and also. A good way is to use the regional networks. As Tony mentioned, DEB has a very vast network, I mean really vast. The Climate Action Network has a very large network. CE Bankwatch has a smaller network, but very well.
Better.
Yes. I wouldn't like to say better, but it is filled with professional people who really know what they're saying about the topics that they are saying. So these are only a couple of examples that can be used to really meaningfully include civil society in consultations. The forum is very welcome. But it is only a small piece of the consultation that needs to happen. So everything can feed into the forum, but the forum itself is not enough. So it would be really good to revise this to enable, see these 42 organizations who had no way of participating in the previous consultations. They decided to go to the commission to ask for this sort of thing. So please use the resources that we have been building over the past 20, 30 years in the countries to ensure a very meaningful consultation on this project, because we are the ones who can do the capacity building of CSOs on the national level. We can do the mainstreaming of the green agenda to the public. So use us as a resource. So that was for your last question, and I have some maybe comments, maybe questions. The thing is that you mentioned that we must leave time, so we have no time, but we must also be patient. We do not have time. This is apparent. I mean, I'm not only talking about the processes, it is also the climate emergency. So we really do not have time. How do we move forward in that case? Because the Green Agenda for the Western Balkans is a massive document. I mean, in terms of the change that it requires, we agreed on that, most definitely. So how do we move forward while being patient? We need to really figure out a way how to do this. And one more, what do we do to ensure that the entire society will be interested in Green Agenda for the Western Balkans? Thank you.
Haris, may I ask you for a brief answer so that we can include others as well?
Is there any government representatives at this table? At this table, so I think that we miss another opportunity to engage in the dialogue. I don't represent governments here. I don't represent 6 governments of the region here, and I don't think that kind of addressing those questions toward me. So. Or Regional Cooperation Council, I don't think that is a kind of, I think that we have to discuss together, and I think that we have to co-design that process all together. You know, where is dialogue taking place? Dialogue is taking place right now. You just read a statement from the NGOs, from the biodiversity NGOs, and you are completely aware. You are completely right when you are talking about capacities, networks, inclusion, and we are working a lot how to define how to define the processes around the NGO forum. It's not enough, definitely, but main decisions are made on the national level. You know, and for a dialogue, you need to have 2 sides with the capacity and the legal capacity or opportunity to make decisions on the spot. So decisions related to the green agenda and commitments are firstly taking place at the national level. And I don't think that regional dialogue, extremely needed, cannot be a replacement for the national dialogue. And if we jump too much to use the regional platforms to replace or to whatever the part that's taking place on the national level, I don't know whether is that most constructive approach to enhance this dialogue at the regional level. So we can maybe ask the experience from the people working on this project. It's working for, I don't know, 10, 12 years. We know where is the civil society standing in the region, where is the government standing in the region, where are the processes standing in the region. I think the smart way is, you know, not to expect something that is not possible. I think the smartest way is that we are talking about transformational change that requires transformation of any single part of the society. And I think that we all need to work together how to create that platform. That is only way to enhance the implementation and to provide this public function, to have a dog watch, to have a rising awareness, to have the participation in co-creation of the documents, but without a kind of scoping our kind of expectation, what is that regional component and how we enhance that, I think that we will kind of spend much more time on kind of trying to understand each other and or all the parties involved. So I think we have the opportunity to improve to improve the processes. I hope that this time we will address several challenges that we had in preparing the last NGO forum in terms of participation, in terms of content of the dialogue, and we need inputs from NGOs, you know, to have this kind of process of co-creating process. But I think that we have to manage expectation as well, especially from the capacity of truly regional agenda. And there is so many elements that we really need regionally to work to work on. But we have to create this environment where we can enhance those capacities toward achieving the common goals.
So we have only 10 more minutes left, and Tony and Nevena also want to contribute more. And I would like to ask you if somebody, yes, please.
Thank you. My name is Sisi Samet. I'm working for the Environment Agency in Austria, and I have two questions. The first one is to biodiversity. I would like to know how is the relationship, or let's say the interrelation between RCC and the Biodiversity Task Force, where the task force you have also government representatives and also NGOs. And my second question is related to the action plan. Are the measures there in any way synchronized with the benchmark of EU accession? So we heard from Nevena, for example, Habitats Directive, Birds Directive, Water Framework Directive. It's not mentioned be adopted, but maybe in other sectors. And how is this going as the accession process is on a different speed in every country? Thank you.
Do we have any other questions, contributions? Yes, please, here. And then I'll close the list, except we have someone online, no?
Hello, everyone. I'm Ergi. I'm a climate and energy justice campaigner from Albania. As a young climate activist, every time when I hear about Green Agenda, I see it as a good momentum for Western Balkan to be engaged and to start the process of decarbonization. But at the same time, when I look at the process, I'm not feeling any more confident, and I see that my future is on the wrong hands. I would like to mention WWF Adria that Irina also mentioned, that the indicator that environmental CSOs and environmental stakeholders are not aware, are not informed about the Green Agenda is a very significant indicator, telling us that the process and the designing process is not being comprehensive. And pointing this out, I want to say that how we can ensure that the implementation of the Green Agenda and the investments are intergenerational, designed and based on intersectional approach. Because European Green Deal, for example, has a social climate fund to mitigate inequalities that its investments can bring. But what's the measure that the Green Agenda has to mitigate this kind of risk that it can bring between different target groups? How we can make it more intergenerational in the designing process and how we can mitigate the social risk.
Thank you. And now we have one online contribution.
Hi, sorry. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you, but not yet see you.
Well, I hope you can see me in any case. I just wanted to just thank the panelists for their contributions. And I'm not pretending, I'm not going to answer all these questions. They're tough in terms of investments, in terms of how the accession process is benchmarked against the green agenda. And it's obviously that's yes, it is benchmarked against the so the accession process should be closely linked to the green agenda because the point is to harmonize the legislation and policy with EU ones. So if you can look at the green agenda as a kind of a boosted version of the EU acquis, so yes, that's the purpose. And I just wanted to say, I think it's not on the investments we can discuss on flagships and priorities for projects. I think the economic investment plan is very well fit for these priorities of the green transition. But the point also is on the other side of availability of projects that would meet the green transition, like district heating projects or intermodal transport, everything about fossil fuels. So we need to work on this part, on the availability projects and working with the governments. And it's a pity that not many governmental representatives are here today. We need to kind of push them to work on these projects. So I think there's lots to work on in terms of this. So yeah, I'm conscious of time, but really thank you for this. I think it's quite a frank exchange of grievances that we have with this whole process. It's not been perfect, but I think we could manage to do better and to be more effective in the coming months, also with the support of the EU for green projects and many other initiatives that we can that are being implemented at national and regional level. So Birgit, over to you.
Thank you very much. 5 minutes left, so we'll make a final round of the panel, starting with Tony and then Nevena and Haris.
Okay, I'll not go into debate because we have time. We can discuss it later. I think this is too valuable time to not make recommendation to the real stakeholders. I mean, European Union, national governments. Okay. Green agenda is to be funded by serious amount of money. It is not money either from European Commission or governments of EU. It is European Union citizens' money, which is being allocated to help green transition of societies in Western Balkan candidate countries. Let's be honest and recognize that it's not lack of capacity, it is lack of political will on behalf of Western Balkan governments to actually use that money in a way which should be used. And there is a strong case to suggest to European Union to find a way to fund local level of green transition. Why EU should not work with local governments? They are legal entities. If you would, call local governments from Western Balkan, submit projects to Brussels. We want to fund your solar power plants owned by a local municipality. You will be flooded by projects and you will be able to use properly taxpayers' money from European Union. If we will wait, governments in region, starting with Croatian government, to change and embrace the spirit of green transition, we will be late.
Thank you. So since we are in the last couple of minutes, I will also give two recommendations actually, and they're mostly to the Commission, I can say. Of course, the RCC is someone who is tasked with the action plan, but also this new EU for Green project maybe. So I opened this question a bit in my first address. it needs to be ensured that national level plans for implementation are made in order to make the actions manageable, because as the action plan is now, it is really broad and it is reasonable to be as broad for this sort of plan. But on the national level, these need to be broken down into smaller pieces, let's say bite-sized pieces, to ensure that things are happening on the ground. Because with the deadlines that are in the action plan, which are fairly loose, I can say, at some points, the implementation is not going to happen. So there needs to be a very strong push from the Commission to implement, to draft those national level plans and to implement them. And then my second recommendation would be to use the national level resources for finding innovative project. So whether it will be through public calls, as was an example in Gorj County in Romania for the Just Transition Plan. I recently wrote about this. You can find it on the Bankwatch website. I will not go into the example now. If someone is interested, I can tell you later. But public calls for ideas that can be funded through the green agenda, through the economic and investment plan and the 9 billion which are related to it, can be a very, very good idea to source these innovative projects, because the governments have what is already on the table. And we saw this in the projects that were submitted through the single project pipeline. So let's be a bit more proactive and ask for projects elsewhere. So citizens submit ideas, CSO submit ideas, and then select, devise a process to select these single project pipelines. Thank you.
Haris, please keep you very briefly. We are over time already.
Okay, I'll be briefly. So I have to respond first to the question on the biodiversity force. The diversity task force, it's a part of the broader structure of regional environment group, regional working group for environment, which has to be transported in a regional working group for the green agenda. So we are aiming for the next meeting on 17th in Brussels with the coordinators to discuss the implementation efforts and several horizontal issues related to the governance, reporting and monitoring on agenda as well. So we will continue absolutely working maybe a little bit adjusted mandate with the biodiversity workforce on implementing and facilitating implementation of the biodiversity related pillars of the action plan. So. And generally speaking, I think, I think this was another opportunity to have a dialogue about engagement and involvement and how to support the processes and how to make the processes more transparent, effective and well financed as well. I know that we don't have time to wait, but I know that we have to work diligently to establish very complex structures and processes around. We don't have time to waste, but I think that this kind of the engagement and the dialogue, and we hope that we will have many before the NGO forum, we help shape and fine-tune the processes around involvement of the broader civil society, but other segments of the society in the planning, monitoring, promoting, and so on of the green agenda and action plan for Western Balkans. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Jelena and Dragana online. It would have been even more great to have you here, but thank you for your online participation. Thank you to the panel. Thank you to the participants, also the real ones here and the real ones online. Everyone is still real, hopefully. And just to give the shortest summary ever, there's need for more dialogue. And we can start with it in the break. enjoy your coffee.